Do what? All right. John chapter 2. And we're not going to read all of these verses because we'll be using quite a few of them. Tonight is more of a, I don't want to call it an introduction because it isn't. We're going to just kind of hit some highlights tonight, and then we'll go back probably next week and get a lot more in detail on some of the things that are found in John chapter 2. This is the first recorded miracle that Jesus performed. In fact, Jesus performed, I believe it's 7 miracles found in John. He did many, many, many more, but John only recorded 7 of them, and each of them have a common theme that we will try to look at as we go through. Now, there's a lot of different ways to approach this first miracle. We could look at it from a scientific, which I will briefly, toward the end. We could look at it as a religious, viewpoint, which I will point out some lessons. But in reading, there are several commentaries spent paragraphs, multiple paragraphs, trying to define where Cana of Galilee and why Cana of Galilee was important and why it was important that Jesus performed his first miracle there. I'm not a geography person a whole lot, so whether it's Cana of Galilee here or Cana of Galilee here or up there, I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference for what we're looking at. But notice it says that there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. I found it interesting that his mother was there, and most people agree that she was some kind of a friend or relative of the bride and or groom. We will notice that I don't know if you would call her a wedding planner, but she's the one that takes the initiative, making sure that everything is okay, making sure they've got enough of everything. And when they run out of wine, she's the one that takes the initiative to go to Jesus and try to get him to do something. And we notice that Jesus and his disciples were there. They were specifically called. They were invited. Now, I've been to a lot of weddings in my life. A lot of them I performed. A lot of them I just attended. And I've never been to a wedding yet. My wife might remind me if I have. But I've never been to a wedding where they just opened the doors and anybody on the street was free to just come in, especially for the meal afterwards. I've never been a wedding where you weren't invited in order to attend the wedding. You had to be invited. I hate it when I get thoughts in my brain and I'm trying to decide to speak them or not. My wife says if I have to think about it, don't speak it. But anyway, they were invited, which would again indicate that they were friends of the groom and or the bride. And the couple was obviously well known. And these, it said the disciples, if you back up to chapter 1, up to this point, Jesus has already called several disciples. And so since they were with Jesus, they received an invitation as well to attend the wedding. Notice, Jesus was honored to be invited, and the couple was honored to have such an outstanding guest in their presence. I think I know I've told somebody, I don't know if I told all of you or not, but 5 years ago, no, more than that, when President Trump was elected the first time, what was that, 2016 he was elected? Now, I know I'm not, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I actually received an official, real, honest invitation from President Trump to attend the inauguration. I should have kept it as proof that I got it. But I got an invitation to attend the inauguration. And I thought, what an honor. Of course, I didn't get it for like 2 weeks after the inauguration, but I did get it. And, you know, and it's like, wow, what an honor to be invited, even if it was 2 weeks late. But then also for the couple, you know, they have the ruler there. He's there. And Jesus is there. He was not well known yet, but he was well enough known that they were very honored to have Jesus there. Now, I put in some lessons, and I use this frequently in weddings. Marriage is ordained of God, and marriage is sanctioned by God. Why do we have weddings? Other than spending a lot of money on flowers, a lot of money on, wow, it's been so long, you know, a wedding dress. You know, we spend a lot of money on food. You know, other than spending a lot of money and making a lot of businesses happy, why do we have weddings? Anybody know? Anybody want to take a guess? Why do we have weddings? I'm sorry, you got to come out and talk to me. To please our wives. That was not on my list, but you know, a wedding is it's a social event, certainly, but it is also an event to publicly proclaim to everyone we are officially, legally, morally, biblically, we are marrying each other for life. You know, it's the only life sentence from which the president cannot pardon and the governor cannot pardon. It's a life sentence. But we want to know, and people, you know, say, well, we're just going to run off and get married, you know, by the justice of the peace. That's legal. You can do that. It is legal. But it misses something. I had the girl's father, who is a very good friend of mine. He and I were talking one day, and his daughter was little on the stubborn side, you know, and her dad didn't 100% approve of the guy she was marrying. And so she got mad. he and her ran off, got married by the justice of the peace, and he told me later that both of them really, really, really regretted it because there was no formal ceremony publicly showing their wedding. You know, and you know, he and I talked about it. But marriage and even a wedding, now the wedding can be any number of things. I remember when I was in college, I had not met my wife yet, but I was in college and I was working, I was Brother Harvey's assistant at that time. So I was going to Olmsted on Sunday and Wednesday. And one Sunday night, after Sunday night service, Brother Harvey said, "Everybody sit down." You know, and it's like, what's going on? And he said, "We have a couple that wants to get married. You two come on up." They got up, walked up to the front of the church, and Brother Harvey married them as part of the Sunday night service. And it's like, wow, that's unusual. But it's one way to guarantee a good crowd, you know, because you got your Sunday night crowd. That was a wedding. They were legally, morally, biblically, spiritually married. But it was a very unusual. You know, it's like, Joe, anybody that wants to get married, and I told him later, you could have had a dozen people down front. 11 of them would have been girls wanting to get married. But, you know, it was all planned out. You two that want to get married, come on down front. A wedding is a public show that we want everybody to know that we are married. Not all weddings in the Bible were public, but this was a very big to-do. Jesus would not have attended anything that was not part of God's plan and purpose. So weddings are part of God's plan and purpose. Now, if you've been married and divorced 15 times and you ask me about a church wedding, I'm probably going to tell you no. You tried it 15 times, it hasn't worked. I don't want to desecrate the church by having number 16 when you know it's probably not going to work. But marriage should be a time of joy and celebration. And I am not going to mention a wedding coming up in a few weeks. But it should be a time of joy and celebration. You know, it's a time to rejoice. It's a time to celebrate. Now, in verse 3, Jesus' mother makes a statement. And I phrased it that way on purpose. She simply said, "They have no wine." She did not say, "Son, go make them some wine." She didn't say, "Son, you need to do something." She simply told him the situation. "Son, they're out of wine." She didn't tell him what to do. She didn't make any suggestions. She didn't say, "I'm your mother, you got to do what I say." She simply presented the need. Now, there's a practical side to that. When we pray, do you think God already knows what we need? Or do you think we have to go to God and say, "God, in case you haven't heard, I need such and such"? Jesus already knew they were out of wine. He already knew because he knows everything. but she simply presented the need. Sometimes in praying, it's not that God doesn't know. He just wants to hear us express our dependence on Him. By making her statements, she acknowledged, there's nothing I can do, son. They're out of wine. I can't do anything. I can't fill the need. I can't run to Kroger's and buy 135 gallons of wine. I can't, miraculously do anything. So she simply presented the need, knowing that Jesus would do what was right and what was best. If they ran out of wine, it would be a very bad reflection on the couple. People would look at him and say, you planned this party and didn't even order enough supplies to get through the party. And it would look, it would be a bad mark on the name of the couple. Or they did such a poor job planning. Now, we don't know how many people were here, but evidently there was a lot of people here. When we have company over to our house, we will usually try to figure out how many people are coming. Okay, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And that's just our family. Well, I added somebody in there. But it's like, how many are coming? So we have 35 people coming. We're going to buy a 1-pound chicken for 35 people. Think that would feed 35 people? No, probably not. So you want to plan so that you've got enough food for the expected number of people. If they ran out of supplies, it would look like they planned very poorly. You have a wedding and you can't even plan for the ceremony. But again, I already said it. She didn't tell Jesus. She didn't even ask him, son, can you do something? She simply said, here is the need. And when we pray, we let our request be known unto God, but we don't tell God what to do. Lord, here's my situation. Here's my circumstances. I would really, really like for you to do this. No, I don't even do that anymore. It's like, Lord, here's the situation. I'm going to put it in your hands, knowing that you will do what is best. Now, when Jesus answered her in verse 4, woman, what have I to do with thee? One way of paraphrasing it is, what do you want me to do about it? And if you read it, it sounds like Jesus rebuked her. And to some degree, it sounds like he might be a rebuke. He said, it's not my time to publicly begin my ministry on earth. This is not the time for that. But she leaves and she tells the servants, do whatever he says. Whether it makes sense or not, whether it's hard or simple, do what he says. And Jesus honored his mother. Now, I think that's important. He did not embarrass her. Mom, would you please stop telling me what to do? Mom, why don't you keep your nose out of everybody else's business? He honored his mother, even though he didn't have to. He honored her and honored her request, I think, because she was his mother. When God wrote the Ten Commandments, honor thy father and thy mother, I think he meant that. I think he meant honor your father and mother. You don't do anything that would embarrass them. You don't do anything that would dishonor them. And so she simply presented the need. And that's what we do in prayer. We present our need, and then it's, Lord, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. Here's what I need. I will trust you to do what is best and what most honors you and what honors the bride and the groom. He honored her, even though she probably was out of order. I was talking to someone this week, and because I can't hear, my hearing aids, this one's dead, and the earliest they can get me in to see the audiologist is next week. So I got to put up with this for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 more days. But we were talking about how disrespectful kids are to everybody. Have you ever seen a kid, mom say, Junior, I want you to clean your room. Stick their tongue out at her. That's very dishonoring. Or get them in front of a crowd of people and do something that you know, or tell something that you know is going to embarrass the daylights out of them. That's dishonoring them. Well, let's move on. He honored her without saying a word by fulfilling what he knew she wanted him to do. Notice her parting words. She knew that he would honor her request somehow. She didn't tell him how to do it. She just said, here it is. You do any way you want to, whatever you want to. I know you will do what's best. She knew he had the power. So it wasn't a matter of can he, but it was a matter of whatever he says, do it. Now, there were 6 large vessels made of stone. And there's a lot of speculation. They could have been different sizes. They could have been, all kinds of things. It says, without question, that they were, in verse 6, that they were after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, has led some people to believe that these were the water pots that when you came in to the house, you washed your hands and then you washed your feet and got the dust off of your feet before you entered into the house. I remember a few years ago, I went to visit a preacher way up in, I don't even know where he was. He was a long way north, I know that. And he had some printing equipment that he was wanting to sell. So I went up to look at the equipment, see if it was anything that we could use. And when I got there, he said, oh, my wife has prepared lunch for you. So, you're going to plan on staying for lunch? And I said, sure, that's fine. So she was Japanese. He was American or English, Caucasian, whatever. She was Japanese. So he invites me to the house. And, he opens the door, so I start in the house. He stops. Stop. You cannot enter the house with my wife with your shoes on. She did not want dirt coming into her house. So I had to stop, take my shoes off, and I wore the holiest socks I had that day. But I had to take my shoes off because you did not track dirt into her house as a guest. And so, and I should have known they had Japanese food. How many of you have ever eaten kimchi? I mean real authentic kimchi. You have,
I don't know if it's that real. That's in a jar.
yeah, now what you buy at the store is not real kimchi. If you've never eaten it, I don't know how to describe it. It smells on you for a week or two afterward. It is super, super strong. But the point was, you don't go in the house with dirt on your feet. You take your shoes off. They went in and they washed their feet before they were allowed to go in. Now, each water pot contained 2 or 3 firkins apiece. And the size of the firkin runs the gauntlet. I mean, it's all over the place. Most of them, almost every commentary that I read was somewhere between 7 and 9. And most of those were 7 to 7.5. Some said, Casey just said 6. 10. Well, I didn't find 10. 9 was the high. My wife said her Bible says 20. I went with the majority, which was 7.5. So if you figure there were 6 of them, each of them contained between 15 and 22.5 gallons, somewhere in between there. If you go with 7.5, and there were 2 firkins per water pot, that would be 90 gallons of wine that Jesus converted. If you go with 3 firkins apiece, still at 7.5, that would be 135 gallons of wine that Jesus made. And if you go with 9, I didn't even figure 9, and I certainly didn't figure 20. But you can understand this was a big, big miracle. The wine that Jesus made defied standard procedures. And the ruler of the party even said as much in verse 10, every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, or the best wine. And when men have well drunk, and they can no longer taste it anyway, then they bring out the cheap stuff because nobody can taste it anyway. They've already well drunk. But in this case, the wine that Jesus made was better than any wine the ruler had ever tasted. You know, it was the best wine that he had ever tasted. And he said, you saved the best till last, which is not normal. But nobody knew where it came from except the servants who filled the water pots. And of course, Jesus and Mary knew. Now, I'll come back because I want to go into a little more detail on some of these things that we've kind of hurried over. some brief lessons, some things that we can learn from this. Turning the water to wine was an act of pure creation. Somebody told me a joke. I'm going to try it. If it flops, it'll be the last joke you hear for a while. But the Catholic priests, the priests drink the wine. I mean, they just turn it up and drink it. The priest was driving. He had a bottle of wine in the front seat beside of him. And he's speeding a little bit. Have you heard it, Charles? You're already laughing. All right. He's speeding, so the police pull him over. And the policeman says, "Is that wine in the front seat?" He said, "No, sir, that's water." The policeman says, "Let me see it." He opens the lid and this is wine. And he said, "Jesus did it again." Was that what you heard? Yeah. Anyway, this was not running to the store and buying everything on the shelf. He literally made something out of nothing that was there. The water pots were obviously empty because he said fill them up. So you don't fill up something that's already full. So turning water into wine was an act of pure creation. It wasn't, okay, all right, stall them. We gotta let this water ferment for 3 weeks. And, there was nothing like that. The same God that created the universe and everything in it made the laws of science, including fermentation, and he had the power to override it when he saw fit. How many of you can walk on water? What happens if you go out to Lake Cumberland down in Somerset, go out to Lake Cumberland and say, "I'm going to walk to the other side," and start walking to the other side across the lake? What's going to probably happen? You're going to probably sink. That's the law of gravity. That's, the law of gravity says you're going down. And yet Jesus walked on water, defying the law of science. He walked on water, defying. He made the law of gravity, and he certainly could override it and overrule it when he wanted to. When a person's dead, I've been to a lot of funerals. I've never seen anybody stand at the casket and say, "Okay, Johnny, get up." And Johnny get up and start walking. Never seen it. That's the law of death. But Jesus defied the law of death when he said to the young 12-year-old girl, "Young lady, arise." And she rose. When he stopped the funeral procession and the mother's only son was in the casket, and he said, "Rise." He defied the law of death. When he said to Lazarus, "Lazarus, come forth," Lazarus defied the law of gravity because he floated out. He didn't walk, he floated out. And then Jesus said, "Loose him and let him go." He was dead. Jesus defied the law of death. He defied a lot of things. He made the law. Now, I can take water all I want to, and I can say, I'm going to speak, and I'm going to turn this water into pineapple juice. All right, turn into pineapple juice. Come on, turn. You think it's going to turn? Not in a million years. Jesus didn't even say a word. That's recorded. And he changed H2O into the best wine that had ever been taken. Jesus knows our need. And he can provide in natural ways or in supernatural ways. Our daughter, and I was reminded of this week, it was before she got married, so that's been a long time ago. She and I were at Sam's, right up the road here, and we were walking through the parking lot, and there was a $100 bill laying in the parking lot. She picked it up and said, "What should we do with it?" I said, "Well, we need to turn it in to the manager because somebody lost it and they may go back to the manager and ask for it." So we went in, turned it into the manager, and the manager said, by law, we keep it for 30 days. If nobody has claimed it in 30 days, sweetheart, it's yours. You come back and we'll give it to you. It'll be yours. That was providing in a natural way. No miracle other than somebody lost a $100 bill. Rachel found it. We took it in. We did the right thing. We took it in, waited the 30 days. We went back and she got her $100. That's natural way. The other way would be is we need $100. And I go to our refrigerator and I open the door, and lo and behold, while I'm looking for the milk, a $100 bill suddenly appears on the shelf. That would be a miracle. Do what? Yeah, I knew a guy when I was young, but that's not a good, talk about cold hard cash. That would be cold hard cash. But there are miraculous ways that Jesus provides. But there are normal ways. And when we present our need, we leave it up to Him and let Him decide if He's going to use natural or supernatural. But He did take care of the couple. He spared them their embarrassment. He honored his mother. And he doesn't love his mother, and he doesn't love the groom and bride any more than he loves us. He loves us just as much as he loved them, and he will take just as good a care of us as he did them. All right.